Okay. Hello, everyone. Let us know if you can hear us all right. We're sharing a mic, so we're trying our best here. But I'm here with Peter and Scott, two of the co founders of Return to the Land, and we are here at the land. We thought it'd be a good idea to start a weekly podcast giving updates on what's going on here and then what's going on around the country, especially when it has relevance to what we're doing and intentional communities and stuff like that. So yeah, let me just check the chat and make sure that we are coming through loud and clear. We are. Awesome. Thanks, Karnik, for modding. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. So to start, I know a lot of you have seen from Peter and Scott both. Peter has a YouTube channel. Scott technically also has a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, I early on for the first 6 months, I did have a RTTL YouTube channel too, but no longer. There was a lot of I accidentally deleted it, but there was a lot of obsolete information in those videos anyway. So either way, it would have had to come down.
Okay, gotcha. Well, yeah, Peter, go ahead and share your links. It's just YouTube now, basically, and Telegram, right?
Yeah, it's just my name. It's just my name on YouTube, and you can find me pretty easily on Telegram. I just started a new Telegram channel called Peter Graham, so that's pretty cool, right? My old one was on like an old phone, so I'm gonna lose it eventually. I don't know why Telegram is set up like that, but I used to have a Twitter, but I was like 95% throttled. There was just no point anymore. I was stuck at 1,046 subs for eternity. There's no going up. There's no recovering from that, basically.
All right. Well, as not everyone here is familiar with our whole backstory, I guess we should probably explain what Return to the Land is in the first place. I know most of you probably are familiar, but Return to the Land is our private association geared towards facilitating intentional communities and community of different forms for people of European heritage. It came together a little more than 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now. And it kind of snowballed really quickly. On this channel, I've advocated for intentional communities and parallel institutions for over a decade. Peter had experience. Well, I'll let him get into that in his own background. But somehow or other, we ended up finding each other through social media. My YouTube channel was involved. Peter's YouTube channel was involved in that. Asha Logos was involved, and he organized some X spaces that helped us to come together. And there were about a dozen of us in southern Missouri at land that I owned at the time, working together to build a restroom facility for a school project. But a lot of those people had ambitions of doing something much larger, including Peter, who had kind of devised what would become the legal framework that Return to the Land is now based on. But again, I'll let him describe those details. But yeah, since we actually pulled the trigger and purchased our land, we've broadened the scope somewhat of what we're trying to do. We didn't really initially envision a national association. It was really more about what we wanted to do with our own lives and the kind of community that we wanted. But we saw that it was inspiring other people wanting to do similar things. And many people have talked about parallel institutions, intentional communities. And it's just really rare to see it happen and then for it to be stable, as opposed to what typically happens where one person, buys the land, people live on it, develop it, and then somehow or other, the land is sold, the guy walks away with money. That's sort of the traditional way this sort of arrangement worked out. But Peter had a lot of foresight, and the group of people that came together to form this, I guess, were just more conscientious or lucky, one or the other, than your typical crowd in these circles. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that for the association. If you guys want to introduce yourselves and kind of how you came into this and all that, Scott?
Well, I guess I'm kind of the opposite titles of Eric. So he's the president of the Return to the Land organization, and he's the vice president of Community One. I am the vice president of the Return to the Land Association, and I'm the president of Community One. So I guess the Groypers in the comments asking about their septic systems and stuff, you should be addressing me, I guess, and not Eric.
Yes, please address Scott with those questions.
Let's see. Eric, I guess I met Eric in 2019. So he was in. Eric was actually in my World of Warcraft classic beta guild. He played a female night elf hunter, and I was a dwarf warrior. This is like 2019. Actually, we were in as it was Asmongold's guild. Actually, he wasn't as big a streamer back then. But make Azeroth great again. And Eric used to always talk about how it was nice how the races had their own racial starting area, and I don't know. He would talk about that a lot. Anyway, I started raiding with Asmongold, and he said that I was like the worst player in World of Warcraft, and that I should uninstall the game. And so I did. And then I went to Eric. I'm like, hey, let's do this racial starting area in real life for our kids. And well, so you could thank Asmongold for RTTL, I guess. Actually, there's a Asmongold PC right here on Eric's desk. Can I turn the camera? That'd be funny.
You probably could.
There you go. So,
in honor of the spiritual patron
There it
behind
is.
the project, Asmongold, that's the computer that I ended up going with for streaming. So yeah, that's the deep lore behind RTTL. Usually not discussed, but now you know. So
I messed up the camera.
Yeah, that's a genuine Asmongold computer right there. I hadn't heard any of that lore before. I'm sure it's all 100% true. But as for my lore, I guess I just have been interested in intentional communities for a long time and been involved with them for a long time. Like probably what year is it now? Like 12 years ago, I first moved to another state to help somebody who was intending to start an intentional community. And I very quickly learned why it's important to pay attention to zoning laws, as all of a sudden I was approached by a bunch of people with guns wondering why the zoning laws weren't being followed on the property. Fortunately, I was not owner of the property and I didn't care, but he'd had to deal with that. And that's one of the many situations where somebody buys a property and thinks, I'm going to start an intentional community here, and they have no idea how to go about it. And maybe they don't even understand the zoning laws, and maybe they get a few like bums to come live on the property, because who wants to live on a property that someone else owns and like actually invest in it? So those were like the early days of me trying to figure out how it all works and how you actually get an intentional community together. So over the years, I became involved with other projects, and early on, it was mainly the sort of libertarian hippie intentional community movement, which is probably 90% of the intentional community movement is the sort of libertarian hippie movement, and it's composed of mostly libertarians, some people who are apolitical, some people who are extreme far left, and then a few far right people who kind of like sneak their way in and pretend to fit in. And it's really kind of a bad scene. And also there's a lot of just projects that fail. There was one book that I read about intentional communities. It was very well researched, and this woman traveled around the world researching all these different communities, including the ones that had failed. And she said 95% of them fail in the first 5 years, and primarily it's because of issues with finances and land ownership. Basically, they didn't do the most basic realistic planning beforehand. They just thought that some guy with money would just buy a piece of land, and all their friends would just come and live on it, and it would work out fine, and it never does. And so I saw situations where like some people that I knew that were doing an intentional community in Hawaii. It had been around for many years, decades, I think. But it had a reputation. Like some family would move there, get to know everyone, get approved to buy in. They would get along really well. And then like the core owner group, they would fall out with them and they would kick the family out. The family would lose the $50,000 they put in. And there was no like paperwork or any formal agreement. So it was very hard for them to do anything. And that happened several times. People would get kicked out. There was never any agreement to pay back the money. And so the intentional community movement, unfortunately, is full of like poorly executed ideas. But there are some very successful ones. And obviously, we hope to be one of the very successful ones. And I think we've demonstrated so far that, we kind of know what we're doing. Although I know there's a lot of gripers that claim that their like septic system on lot 17 is not working. I don't think lot 17 has anything on it, much less a griper living on it. So, who knows what's going on there.
Well, groypers being groypers, I guess. Yeah, so that's how we all kind of got into this. Like Peter, I had kind of a libertarian phase. Scott, I know, had a libertarian phase.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually did a little campaigning for Ron Paul Revolution back in the day.
Mhm. He was featured on the home screen of the campaign website.
Yeah, actually, Ron Paul had me on the front of his site. I did like a testimonial. This is early YouTube days, so like 2006, 2007, and it made it to the front page of YouTube back when YouTube actually sorted videos based on what was popular. There was no algorithm really.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was super libertarian, but a lot of people in RTTL have gone that libertarian pipeline.
Right. But I think it's actually really useful because when you go from a libertarian ideology that is very theoretically intensive and well thought through to this kind of neo-fascist stuff that a lot of people fall into, frankly, there tends to be a decline in the realism of your political prescriptions. It's all about sort of charismatic figures, and that is politically efficacious, but there's a difference between what succeeds in getting political power and how you actually run any kind of bureaucracy or state. So I think starting from a more libertarian place especially allowed Peter to think in depth about contract and what people were getting themselves into and who would be liable for what. So some people have criticized our first community's framework as being too libertarian, but I'd say if you're looking to do a community on your own, the way to err is in a libertarian direction at first, because you can always add more complexity or more rules as you need them. Whereas if you start with this, neo-fascistic, national socialist, big plan, A, it's going to constrain the number of people who totally align with it, who want to do it. And B, there's just more to go wrong. Let's keep it simple and keep it to, what this is all about, which is preserving our people and providing safe neighborhoods for our kids. So, yeah. Do you want to also just explain, Peter, how you sort of came up with the initial bare bones elements of the framework, how that evolved, what it is now compared to what it was then?
Well, back when I was involved in the sort of libertarian, bordering anarcho-capitalist, hippie intentional community movement, we had a bunch of people, and they would all buy a piece of land together, and it would be something called tenancy in common, where you have a bunch of names on the land title. So the deed is awarded to like 7, 8, 20, 30 people, whatever. And it's kind of a messy, clunky, slow process to add and remove people. And there's a lot of issues. You can't really do anything if you have any problems. I mean, there's some things you can specify in the deed, but you're really limited in what you can do. So the owners that start causing a whole bunch of problems or decide they don't want to pay for the road, help pay for the roads, there's really nothing you can really do about that. And so we had been doing that for a while. This is not us, but like, people I was involved with a long time ago. And the lawyers, after a while, after they started to become really familiar with what we were doing, because they were writing the documents for us and everything, they would start to make suggestions like, hey, you guys should really, they were like, yeah, we've seen people do this before. What you should really do is register a business and put the property in the name of the business and have all the owners be the owner of the business. And they would, and after a couple years of lawyers telling me that, I started to really see, okay, we should really be doing it that way. So I did a whole bunch of research, wrote a whole bunch of documents, wrote up proposals, talked to people, and started to send out emails to all the owners that were involved in those projects to say, hey, we really should do it this way. This is a much better way of doing it. It's going to have all these great benefits, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, a few of them understood. They're like, yeah, we need to do it this way. And a whole bunch of them just didn't care, or the ones that are causing problems don't want to do it that way because they see that doing it a better way is going to fix the problem. And if you are the problem, you don't want the problem to be fixed. So I left for other reasons too, because, those people were libertarians and, frankly, quite degenerate. And I didn't really want much to do with that movement anymore. But one of the reasons for leaving was not just that, but also because there was no future, because they didn't want to use a proper legal framework. So now, doing what the lawyers have been telling us to do for years, all of a sudden the media is like, what they're doing is illegal. This is totally legal. And, the leftist activists online, they're breaking this law, they're breaking that law. Well, I mean, We're not, but you can keep saying that if you want. But anyway, so I basically wanted to do it the way that the lawyers had been recommending us to do it. And part of that framework was not just having some type of business entity or trust or what have you owning the land to help the owners administer it and receive the benefits from it. Part of it is also having an association that represents your movement that people can be a part of. Because you don't want to be open to the general public, you don't want to be a public business, you don't want to be dealing with every weirdo out there. You have certain views, certain political views, certain social views, certain religious and moral views. And the entire idea, even in the hippie movement, starting intentional community is because you want to be around people who intend to be with each other. Whether it's a community solely focused on permaculture, or I remember there was like a woman only intentional community. It was like they all hated men, and it just wanted like 45 women to live together in a big compound or something like that. So whatever your intentions are, you want people around who are similar to you. That's the whole point of doing an intentional community. And so having the PMA, or the Private Membership Association, which isn't anything fancy, it's just a voluntary association of people. You can make it more fancy if you want, but having that gives you this grand association that sort of like sorts through people, and okay, these are the people that we all have what's called a common bond in the world of fraternal organizations. There are these things that hold us together, these common beliefs and traditions and values, and so you have this association, and so people in that association, maybe they want to live together, and so they buy a piece of land together, and they do what's called an expense sharing agreement. And so the business entity or whatever they end up forming to buy their land together, it doesn't operate as a business. It operates as an expense sharing agreement. So it's essentially formed to administer the commonly owned asset and the common elements of the property that they live on. So that's basically the bare bones, the idea of it, the origin, how it came into play, and the thought that went into developing it.
Yeah, and it's a very flexible kind of framework. By the same token, though, it's going to attract people who want to form more traditional types of society that now are hard to maintain in light of civil rights laws, fair housing laws, things like that. And so when we constituted ourselves in this way, and it became widely known, and there was talk of multiple RTTL communities cropping up, I think the powers that be sort of sensed the implicit danger in this. I don't think it's a danger at all to facilitate and allow people to have communities that reflect their values, that are intentional, and that, yeah, are more traditional and based on some deeply held common identity. Say again?
You said based.
Oh, that's true. I did.
Yeah.
Based. So based. So yeah, they then have now started passing laws preemptively. So we have a couple news items we can actually look at. One of which, and I don't have screen share all set up and ready to go. We're going to have Peter read it off his phone, I think. Or, you printed it out.
We're all Uncle Ted fans here, right. So I hand wrote it on a piece of paper. No, I have it printed out. But there's several news stories.
Let's look at the Epic City / Meadow.
So most people have heard of this already, right? And this was already on the news months ago. So I was a little confused why I saw it on the news again recently. Well, this was December 31st. I saw the headline. I was like, well, this is old news. Why are they reporting on it again? In Texas, a 400-acre Muslim development sparks controversy. In Josephine, Texas, apparently they wanted to start a massive
let's show the
Muslim development.
On Zero Hedge.
Yep.
I read the article. Good article.
Famous propaganda website. And so I looked a little further because I was a little confused as to why they're reporting on it again. Because there's this whole, they even have the whole, their propaganda commercial that says Epic City. And I thought that it started, and then Texas lawmakers passed a law to make Epic City illegal, and then Epic City wasn't going to happen. And so apparently they renamed it, right? The city was renamed The Meadow. That just sounds like a white suburban community, neighborhood, gated, whatever. After backlash at the local, state, and federal levels. Republican leaders, including Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and residents have opposed the proposed 402-acre Muslim development outside the rural town of Josephine, Texas. So they attempted to pass a law to make it illegal. Apparently, that law did not make it illegal, and all this happening, they changed the name just to avoid all the scrutiny, and they're still going through with it. And if it were illegal, that new law they passed, they would just be able to go and, arrest them, sue them, put them in jail, take legal action against them, whatever. But the Texas lawmakers have done absolutely nothing. And the Texas Attorney General has done absolutely nothing. All they're doing is just complaining about it. And that makes me think that, just like in Pennsylvania, they passed what is essentially an empty law that forbids the way they think things are being done, and the things aren't actually being done that way. Now, do I think Epic City should exist, whether it's called Epic City or the Meadow? No, because I think that Muslim development should be occurring in whatever countries they have over in the Middle East, not here. But it's kind of like people call that law the anti-RTTL, the Texas anti-RTTL law. Well, if the Meadow can go forward and it's not illegal, I don't think that law really made anything illegal.
Well, the thing about that law is that there is specifically a religious exemption to it. So ostensibly, lawmakers were concerned about the spread of Sharia law and this Muslim development, but in fact, they actually allow specifically large religious organizations with their own settlements like that to keep proceeding as they already had. So at the end of this bill that ultimately was passed, subsection A does not apply to the sale, rental, or occupancy of a dwelling that is a single-family house, duplex, triplex, or quadruplex located on a subdivided lot in a parcel of land 25 acres or greater owned by a religious organization, association, or society, or a nonprofit institute or organization operated, supervised, or controlled by, or in conjunction with a religious organization, association, or society. So essentially, what the law did was to stipulate that when you have a holding company for a piece of land, and then instead of transacting in deeds to real estate, as in conventional real estate markets, you transact in shares in that holding corporation. When you do that, this Texas law says that you cannot restrict, as the managing entity of that holding company, the transfer of shares. And the transfer of shares have to be treated by all the same fair housing laws that would apply if it was fee simple real estate transactions. So it really is precisely targeting the exact mechanism that we've used to hold our land. And I don't think that was accidental. I don't think this was ever intended to stop the Sharia compound.
I think it was accidental. I don't think it was targeted towards us.
No, it was at us.
I think now it's targeted towards us.
Yeah. In Pennsylvania, it is explicitly.
At the time, nobody knew who we were when they first filed that. I think just by chance, the Muslims created the same framework that we created, the same framework that Irania created, the same framework that Woodlander created. It's just this was the best vehicle to do it. That's probably how they chose it. They got attacked from pressure.
I think theirs was actually a little bit less formal than ours. It was somewhat more like an HOA, and it was like, in order to own real estate in the compound, you had to either attend the religious education or essentially pay like the jizya tax because you're not enrolling your children or attending mosque, something to that effect. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they held the land.
And now for sure the other ones, Pennsylvania and stuff, directly targeting.
So there's a bill in Pennsylvania that is explicitly intended to preempt white intentional communities. I think that was the title and the headline.
It specifically targets a legal exemption that, as far as we understand, we aren't really using. So it's another situation of the lawmakers don't really know the law that well. I mean, they're elected based on their popularity and how much money they spend on their campaign, not necessarily how good they are of an attorney. And of course, sometimes they'll have lawyers on staff that will actually write the laws for them they submit. But a lot of a lot of them are young people out of college. They don't really understand what they're doing. So if some lawmaker in Pennsylvania says to his staffers, hey, write me a law that makes RTTL legal, what are they going to do? They're going to go to the news websites. They're going to read about how the media thinks RTTL operates, and they're going to write a law that basically bans the caricature of RTTL. The other thing to remember in Texas is that the law is specifically against entities owning land and share transfers and things like that. Epic City is a very public thing. It's advertising publicly towards the Muslim general public.
Right.
It's not a private association at all. There's no like larger association of Muslims that you have to be a member of to join. It's entirely public. So this is one of those things that will have to get taken to court in the future eventually. But I have a feeling that if Epic City did not advertise, and not that I think that they should be doing what they're doing, I think they should be in Sandistan doing that. But if they didn't advertise and they weren't a public project, they weren't like, oh, we're going to publicly sell land to the Muslim general public in the United States, nobody would have noticed them. But these are big, rich developers who are trying to make millions of dollars, so they're not trying to do things that way. They want to be public, and they want to get, and who knows, they might have donated a whole bunch of money to those Texas lawmakers' campaigns. So all they're going to do is complain about them publicly, and they won't actually pass a law. If they were to pass a law to make that illegal, they would also be making, because in the United States, discrimination is in law is unfortunately illegal right now. So they would be banning Christian communities as well. And there are plenty of Christian communities where you have to be a member of the church to live there, buy land there. They're not, those specific communities are, open to the public, and they aren't allowed to racially discriminate, but they're allowed to discriminate purely for religious reasons. And so if Texas lawmakers that made that illegal, there'd be a whole lot of Christians in Texas and around the country who live in Christian communities that would really not be happy at that legal precedent. So their hands are tied.
Yeah. The Texas Attorney General did file a suit against them on the grounds of religious discrimination, as well as the actual organizers were accused of embezzling funds. So I think it was a securities, of course, a securities related charge, but ultimately has not turned anything up yet. The rest of the discussion was really about the nature of a Sharia compound and who is organizing it. And I forget the acronym for this Muslim American Association, but someone, including I think Rubio, was talking about classifying them as a terrorist organization. And so that's another angle they could take. Specifically, they would take that with, white separatist groups as well. And freedoms we would ordinarily have could be suspended because we pose some threat of sedition or something like that. And I think that was the angle they were trying to move towards for the Epic settlement, or the Meadow settlement, as it's now known.
Now it's the Meadow.
Right. So what's the next story?
Oh, well, speaking of sedition or seceding, there's this very interesting juxtaposition. And so there's this news outlet that no one ever heard of this news outlet until they started reporting on us. It's called The Forward, right? I don't know if you can see that. So you just have like two headlines next to each other. And somebody posted this on X recently. So the first headline is obviously The Forward complaining about what they call a whites-only, no Jews community, with Eric's face there. And then the next article is them celebrating a Jewish-only town in New York that somehow is allowed to discriminate on ethno-religious grounds. Celebrating Kiryas Joel allowed to secede from upstate New York town, right? I don't know what the date of that article, but the Hasidic community of Kiryas Joel reportedly will become the first Haredi Orthodox town in the United States. And they say it's a purely religious thing, but if you go there, it's obviously racial discrimination as well. After voters in Monroe, New York, overwhelmingly backed a referendum on secession. So imagine if we got so many people in one area of the country in our movement and we decided to secede from a town. That would be seen as this horrendous thing, and politicians would be calling for us to be executed, even if we were trying to do it in a completely legal way. So this is sort of proves the thesis that we've had all along, the rules for thee but not for me. So one community is allowed to be exclusive and even secede from towns and have a Jewish-only town, a Jewish-only police department, a Jewish-only fire department, everything and discriminate as much as they want. There have been some lawsuits against them in the past, which of course they've won. And Eric's the big bad guy for doing something that's not even as noteworthy. What they're doing is probably blatantly illegal, whereas what we're doing is completely legal.
They're also massively on welfare. Like the state is paying for these people to breed and eat.
Oh yeah, there was a little mini documentary on YouTube. Some guy went out there, right, and just interviewed a bunch of them.
Yeah,
And they were all had
Tyler
huge families. They're
Oliveira.
all on welfare. They all have they don't report any of their income. So the average income there is like $15,000 to $20,000 a year. Obviously, they have more money than that.
They asked some random Jew about RTTEL, and of course he knew who we were. They're our biggest promoter.
Yeah, right. I think there was a directly analogous case in a suburb of Atlanta, right? It was like a disproportionately white suburb, and they did actually secede, but it wasn't like a racial or religious thing. It was just that they wanted to stop subsidizing with their taxes these, failed schools in the inner city. So they ended up kind of forming their own municipality. And there are some things that can accomplish, but it's fairly limited. The reason the Jews in Curious Joel are able to make so much of it is that they do a lot under the table, like we're saying, and a lot informally. And that's sort of the way that the Muslim community wanted to take it as well. And I mean, my feeling is, yeah, I would rather they did that in Israel or Sandistan, respectively. But if they're going to do it, I want the same rules applied to everyone, and I want to know what the rules are. The worst case is this kind of anarcho-tyranny where some groups get away with the things, and then others, they decide to clamp down arbitrarily. In our own case, we're under investigation, which is reasonable. I mean, a lot of people were skeptical when we got here, what our intentions were. People who form a compound, some people are concerned about that or nervous about that. Yeah, we don't call it a compound. But
Some of us do.
some of us do, yeah. Um,
I call it the ranch.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
head on back to the ranch.
right.
I just call it Arbal's compound.
Well, you also call it Arval's Trailer Park.
Yeah.
Now the Gripers call it that too.
Right. Well, I think it's fair that we are under investigation, but we'll see ultimately. Right now, the only actual legal action that's directly taken against us is a private civil suit where, for some reason, they're trying to implicate our various companies because they are indirectly associated with one of our members who's under this lawsuit. So we think it's going to resolve itself fine. However, every time something like this happens, it's teaching us how to organize where we have more anonymity, where we're harder to target in this way. And we're kind of building up that body of knowledge to, outsmart the lawmakers. Not that we're trying to get around the law, but, when they try to preemptively take away our rights, we'll have organized in a way that's savvy enough or subtle enough where they're kind of simple-minded approach won't work. But yeah, do you want to go into any of the details of what's going on with this lawsuit and what it might entail?
Well, no details because the lawyer is going to be in my ear saying you should not say anything about. We can't comment on ongoing litigation. However, I guess I will say that in a lot of ways, this lawsuit is really good for us because if you file a lawsuit against somebody and you list a whole bunch of co-defendants that are completely unrelated to the case, but there's like some procedural rules that allows you to list them. Like, for example, this person's name is on this paper over there, and this person's name is on this registration over there. And there's procedural rules that might allow the judge to be like, okay, we'll let this slide. All these other things, entities, people, whatever, are listed as co-defendants. That's frivolous, but it's expensive, and it's a problem. So when I say it's good for us, after this lawsuit is resolved, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to sue us and RTTL related entities in general, because now we've been going about this, we've been learning, people have been telling us things, and a lot of those things aren't true, and a lot of those things are from ChatGPT. We've gotten lectures about anonymous trusts and all kinds of different, certain states allow you to register anonymous LLCs, but on the other hand, you don't want to get sued in 3 different states. There's a lot of things to consider. And so people give us advice. We talk to lawyers. It's not just like at the beginning, there were these practices that we could have immediately engaged in to make it a lot harder for frivolous legal action to be taken against us. These things require lots of time and research. And for example, one of the research papers we commissioned was $2,200 just for that one legal paper. And so this stuff is very expensive, but we've gotten some very good results. And hey, getting sued is certainly a good way to help you to put everything you learn to action. So,
and just seeing the process too, we learned a lot just the other day. Me and Peter had to spend the day with a lawyer responding to, I don't know, was it like 70 different things, different complaints in this lawsuit?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, there are some things we know about the lawsuit, like Garrett Lavoie is involved. He's a funny guy.
That's who we believe actually posted the first like viral posts about us on r/Jewish on Reddit.
Yeah. He's the guy that inspired all those death threats against our families and stuff like that.
Yeah, and tried to have my children taken away and our land condemned by the health department, just blanket complaints. So if anyone is particularly good with online research, Garrett Lavoie is the best ID we can pin on this guy. But
that was just a Reddit name, right? It's
probably.
But after that, he started using others' usernames that were not names at all. So there is actually a chance that that was his name or similar to his name. And after that, he started using pseudonyms. But it's interesting. He's a crazy guy, far left guy who spends all his time on Reddit trying to tell other people that he's centrist. It's also weird that he's in contact with Billy Roper, which is kind of strange, but I mean, strange bedfellows, I guess they would say. But we don't want to get into too much detail because, we don't want to reveal our power level. As for the lawsuit itself, obviously we can't talk about details, but just in general, hypothetically, imagine that you're buying a property. Imagine that somebody's buying a property from a group of people and you're helping that person and you're involved in some way, but you're not the one selling the property. And something happens with the sale and you get sued instead of the sellers of the property, right? That would be a bad situation for you, right? Obviously. But anyone can file a lawsuit against anybody for any reason. They can also just kind of make up stuff. So the only reason that it's the lawsuit involves RTTL related entities that may or may not be involved with RTTL, is because there's somebody else involved. And he's one of those people that he uses different usernames and he talks to different people and he tries to hide, but you could always tell it's him just because of the weird fingerprints he leaves, and he uses ChatGPT to write everything. It's like he's really bad at not making it really, really obvious who he is. Like when I see someone posting on Twitter and it's him, it's like that's him. It's obvious.
Right. Yeah. So if you can aid in that investigation, turn up any details, feel free to DM me on X at @Arvol_ or on Telegram at Arvol, ARVOLL. It'd be nice to be able to send like a cease and desist letter or something like that. It's also just remarkable how much one obsessive personality can be a nuisance. Like you'd think at some level it would be systemic discrimination against a group like ours, but the majority of the issues we get are just some guy with a grudge or some irrational kind of schizotype.
The nice thing about this one guy is like one of the things that he allegedly may have done was the false CPS complaint, and that's actually illegal.
Right.
You could get fined and get put in jail for that. So we're collecting sort of like all this ammo that in the future we can use for legal action if we decided to do that in the future. So it's kind of when somebody sort of does something that that illegal. I mean, the complaints are anonymous to us, but they're not anonymous to the institutions that they're made to, and the government can choose to go after somebody for making false complaints. So.
Right. So, Jews have the ADL, other groups have legal defense associations. Currently, we don't have anything comparable. And the direction that RTTL is evolving in, we're going to be able to offer more of those protections for individual members, for whole communities. And the fact that we're being put through this is kind of good because very few people have put themselves out there to this kind of public scrutiny and also being exposed to the possibility of the system, the government itself coming down on us. So far, I think it is actually holding up. I mean, it was very encouraging when the Attorney General of Arkansas said, after investigating for a month, that they couldn't find anything wrong in what we were doing. And that is not guaranteed to remain the case, but it's at least, a sound enough framework that months of investigation by whole government departments don't turn anything up. So we do have a couple super chats, and the link has been posted in the chat, entropystream.live/app/arvel. And so Michael asks, have you considered creating local barter with your own currency, whether it's silver, banknotes, or coins? We have.
Yes.
We've talked about that. I don't know how much we really should or can share about it.
We do like silver a lot, physical silver. It's great.
We can say that much at least.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As for other, other types of situations and systems, we have a project that we're working on that's very, very cool. We're never going to announce it to the public. A lot of things that we do are just going to be for RTTL members because we're not a public organization. So to answer the question, yes.
All right.
Yes.
So it looks like the stream doesn't play on Entropy, but if you go to that link, you can ask questions there. And okay, we'll just leave it at that for now. So, is there another news story?
Was
Did
there
you have-
another super chat there? Or are you skipping
Well,
it?
actually, it's not. The other guy got a free chat because that's not a paid chat.
Oh, okay.
I've not used Entropy a whole lot.
See, I'm not
so
I'm not a
confused.
professional streamer, so I don't know how any of this works.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's another news article. I think we only had 3, so
Yeah,
I didn't really have time to find more.
no, that's fine.
So this one's kind of a bizarre one. I don't really know how relevant it is at all to our subject matter, but we're just gonna go ahead with this because I saw it on GLP. We got any Godlike Productions members out there? It was actually from a news article, but so Joshua Anthony Link, a 24-year-old man on trans hormones from Belleville, Illinois, reportedly. Wait, are we supposed to say unalived himself, or can we actually say the real thing?
Stick with that.
Oh, darn. I hate that. Link also went by the name Nomad Thunder, was an avid game, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the important thing is his parents are now blaming and suing the church that employed him as a custodian, St. John's Lutheran Church in Granite City, since the pastor didn't permit him to wear a French maid outfit and cat ears while working. And so he took his own life 1 week after being fired. The parents are blaming the church, so they should have been more understanding. The parents don't understand what's wrong with society, how you can raise a kid in what you think are normal ways, and it just turns out like that. And the pictures are really disturbing because you see his family, and there's this dude in a French maid suit and cat ears. How does that happen? Apparently, it says here, apparently it's a whole internet subculture connected to anime and gender nonconformity. So if you let your kids on the internet, that's what's going to happen to them.
Yeah. no,
Wait, it gets
it's-
better. His parents have since purchased a cat and named it after him.
Wow. Well, that's I wouldn't say that's the rational response. I mean, all they did was not let him wear the French maid outfit.
Which was
And
part of
cat
his
ears.
identity.
I mean, they already hired him despite being a church and he was trans. You'd think that'd be accepting enough, right?
But, I mean, it was the Missouri Synod. I think they're more of a conservative branch of the Lutheran. I don't remember that much about the Lutheran Church, but maybe they had second thoughts. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe he started transitioning after they hired him. And he just showed up one day with the French maid outfit and the cat ears. And the priest was just like, no, we're not doing
Yeah.
this.
Which I think is fair. But it just kind of goes to show the problem is not just that the demographics of our country have changed. It's also that a lot of our social systems are deeply broken. And the demographic change likely has a lot to do with it because people don't know what natural kind of identity they should embrace and what they should actualize themselves to be. We're kind of isolated as individuals, and individuals can go haywire. You kind of need to be glued into a broader social fabric that's going to hold you accountable and put some guardrails up. Because like it's relatively easy as a young man, especially when your brain's not fully developed and your hormone levels are really high, to it's just easy to go off the rails and start entertaining things that should not be entertained. I know obviously I did a lot of things in my early 20s that I regret. And we have to have a society that's functional that imposes certain moral constraints. Now, I don't trust the United States government to do that. You know, I don't trust even state governments to do that because it's too large, too bureaucratic. What we're doing actually offers a tangible solution. Parents can raise their kids as best they can, but if your kids are going to public school, if they're exposed to the internet broadly, then they can fall into these subcultures, which are really designed to brainwash and hypnotize young people and turn them into these freaks, frankly. No, well, offense, sort of, but it's not healthy. You know, it's not that I hate the people who do that. It's that it's bad for them. I don't want to see that happen to my children. So communities like this, I mean, how else can you actually put those guardrails up and keep your kids accountable and keep them healthy and grounded and traditional and all that? That's, you know, some people I think are naively optimistic. If we just got rid of all the brown people, then the country would be, you know, the 1950s again.
They're going to clip that quote, just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. You know, it would be better, in my opinion, if the country was more like the way it was when it was founded, you know, with our founding stock. That's what America was. But that's not the core issue, even itself. There's a reason why we got to that point. There's, so I think we need to really socially experiment to find those grounds. I mean, anything to say on that, the trans kid internet issue?
All the
Not really.
leftists like they theorize that the reason that we, you know, people on the right take their kids out of public school, and you know there's a lot of leftist homeschoolers too, but whenever someone on the right does it, they say it's because we want to like secretly teach our kids a lot of neo-Nazi propaganda. And the real reason is we just don't want to teach them. We just want to not teach them to chemically castrate themselves. All that weird stuff, it comes from like the school psychologist, the school guidance counselor, their 5th grade teacher who's in Antifa. It comes from Discord, right? Kids just, no matter how well intentioned the parents are, if you expose your kid to that, they'll just turn out that way. There's nothing you can do about it. So we're not hiding in like Wolfenstein dungeons teaching our kids about various World War II figures. We're just not teaching them the terrible things they would pick up if we let the mainstream education system have their way with them.
Right. Do we have statues of Klaus Barbie? And, you know, maybe, but it's just part of. Is that not normal? Shouldn't you venerate? It's history, man. Okay. Just drop that. And that's all the news stories. We've introduced ourselves. We talked a little bit about Return to the Land. I guess the final section here is updates on what's actually happening on the ground.
Super chat.
Oh, an actual super chat. Thank you.
It's from a LARPer username too.
Okay, awesome.
That's cool.
Militaristic for $20. Thank you very much. Question for y'all: is there a respective legal framework for businesses in the community? Interesting question. We're talking about it right now, essentially. We are very highly constrained in what we can do in terms of businesses, but we're coming up with solutions there as well. So he says, word of mouth style community subsidiary, maybe, right? Or are you guys not looking into that at this time? No, absolutely, we are looking into it. We're discussing possible businesses to invest in, not as Return to the Land, not as the company that holds the land here, but there aren't a ton of regulations saying who can be on the board of managers of a company, or who are the investors if it's a investor run or investor managed business. Whereas there are a lot of laws when it comes to who you can employ. So hiring laws, employment laws, you have to be very, very strict. Basically, you can't have more than 6 employees in the state of Arkansas. Federally, I think it's 12 or maybe 15 before you start having to bring in token people in your
And those
workforce.
are employees, not 1099 contractors.
Right.
So if you
Yeah.
have a legitimate 1099 contractor, it's not the thing where you pretend to have them. If you do that legitimately, then you could have a lot more, depending on how your business is set up, you could have a
True.
lot more employees in that. But
Or you can have one business doing a certain function with 6 employees, and then it contracts with another business that also has some employees, and they all happen to know each other, but it's not one corporation that's managing this huge workforce. So I think the best thing though is just to start small, start on a scale where you don't run into these regulations, because we do have entrepreneurs in the association, but the goal is really to scale beyond what any of us have done before. It's like this land buy. Peter had experience. I had owned land and tried experiments like these before, and some other people have homesteaded. But this scale and what we're actually doing here, I don't know. Was the community in South America larger in terms of acreage than this?
oh yeah,
Oh,
a lot
lot
larger,
larger. Okay.
but there was a lot less people. So
Right. So in some sense, it's still a larger scale here, and the goal is to go beyond what we could do as individuals. So, um, if you want to get involved in that discussion, consider looking into possibly joining Return to the Land, returntotheland.org, and get in our chats where we're currently talking about what sorts of businesses we might want to invest in and manage. There's talk of manufacturing based here on the land. There's talk of, I mean, we've talked about like farming co-ops or ranching co-ops where we have beef that we distribute. Or, I mean, there's all sorts of possibilities within a PMA framework, that are beneficial. Where within a PMA, this is something that's commonly done for raw milk. People will own shares in a cow, and then you distribute the milk as opposed to buying raw milk out of a store where all these regulations are applicable. In the private domain, when it's just cottage industry exchange, um, you can serve a lot of direct needs. So that was definitely a big part of the original vision for Return to the Land. Asha Logos made a video called A Call to Return to the Land, and he talked all about how we could be directly serving economic needs and stuff like that. We've experimented with that in a very limited way. I mean, we've exchanged farm goods and things like that in a lawful way, and it is very nice to have. Because I grow, tomatoes. Peter, not that I actually do. I've not grown tomatoes successfully. I tried this last year, but failed. But Peter has goat milk, and we can exchange. We can do these things. In terms of business, though, we're looking at bigger things.
yeah, and then people also they want to know about like businesses, like what are the restrictions businesses on the land here in the community.
Yeah.
And so obviously the PMA Return to the Land itself can't do business with the general public, and any entity that owns the land for us can't do business with the general public. But as individuals, we can open businesses and do whatever we want. And it's just that here on the property, you're limited. We have bylaws and we limit public facing businesses on the property just because we don't. Think of it like a gated community. We don't want a whole bunch of traffic coming in and out because somebody started like a gas station in the middle of the property or something stupid like that. So there are limitations on what people can do in terms of like businesses the public has to come to all the time. But you can obviously live here and then, buy a parcel of land in town and start a business on it or rent. There's plenty of commercial real estate for rent around here in the whole, basically the entire South Ozarks and Appalachia because of what the Sackler family did to the people in all these areas over the last, 10, 20, 30 years. And also what environmental regulations did to coal and timber and stuff like that. And so there's huge economic downturn in all these areas. So you drive around, you see shut down gas stations, you see empty warehouses, you shut down commercial storefronts that have been empty for, the town we live in the 80s is a lot more bustling than it was now. There were more businesses that were open and everything. So I think that those things will recover as a lot more people realize that these areas of the country, as economically devastated as they have been, they're the only place where a true conservative spirit remains in America. They're the only place where you can safely do something like this and raise your kids in an area. Like imagine trying to do this in a blue state. That would be crazy. I know there's a lot of blue state RTTLers that want to do it, and I think that's great, but there will be a time for that. And I think right now, attorney generals in those states would just, as soon as they got a complaint, they would just, unless you had $100K to spend on a lawyer right away, you might as well just wait. until the Overton window gets bumped, a little bit further, a little bit. When Eric finally gets on like Tucker Carlson, the time to strike is then.
Mm-hmm. That's when the Vermont RTTL
Yeah,
crops up.
yeah. That's when the Connecticut RTTL.
Right.
I did submit a tip to Tucker Carlson, so
Okay, good.
He submits lots
Appreciate
of
that.
tips to Tucker Carlson. In fact, if all of you could
Yeah.
submit tips to Tucker Carlson, that would be great.
Yeah,
we
please
got to
do.
get Eric on Tucker. That would be hilarious.
Yeah, please, actually. Brian M says, win stream. You guys are who we want to hear from. Thank you very much, Brian. Jackie Chun, $5. Do you have an argument against the federales coming in and forcing you to set up Section 8 housing or some other forced migration into your community like we see in major cities? Well, this is our private property. It's not like this is our town that we took over and there's real estate that they could Section 8 or eminent domain and just take like that. We own this land collectively as a corporation. So there's no, I mean, they could eminent domain the land in general if they wanted to, because the government can always do that wherever you are. But then they're supposed to compensate you fair market value. And what we would do is we would take that money and go just start another community somewhere else.
It's very unlikely. The area is so rural. I mean,
Yeah.
theoretically, they could buy a property down the road to just put Section 8 housing there, but we're literally in the middle of nowhere. Nobody wants to live out here.
There are no jobs. So where would these people work? There's no work programs. So it would require hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in investment in the area to be able to support a population of Somalians or something like that.
In the middle of nowhere, it's like 45 minutes just to see an actual divided highway. That's how middle of nowhere we are.
Yeah.
So, and I love it here, and a lot of people love to live that rural. A lot of people hate it, and that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah. People talk about these hypothetical dangers, and they also criticize us for being so remote and saying that we've run away. But there's a reason why we chose a location like this. And in terms of those threats, like I'm investing all of my resources and my family's well-being in this community being secure and safe. Scott's doing the same. Peter's doing the same. Other community members are doing the same, because we've all done the research and we see how unlikely it is that another Waco happens. I mean, the extenuating circumstances there, of course, are very different from our circumstance. And also, trust in institutions isn't what it used to be. So I guess the worst case scenario is that Democrats win in the next election, the culture slides more towards the left, and any group like us just becomes a public enemy, and then we're legally persecuted. And yes, that's a possibility, but by doing this, by building these communities, we are pushing back in the other direction in a way that's not looking militant and white supremacist and white nationalist, and we're going to go march on the Capitol and, take the country back and deport 100 million people. Instead, we're pushing back in a way that is asserting our freedom, our right to freely associate, and to just mind our own business. And I think that's such a defensible position that if you argue that we have to engage in a political struggle and running away is not an option, I would just say the best way to engage in the current political struggle rhetorically and legally is in this battlefield for our right to have intentional communities in our own private property. Because as you rightly point out, if we just tried to all move to some given relatively white city, well, then it'd be really easy for them to move in Section 8 housing and totally demographically transform the place, or for Amazon to put down a distribution center. So by starting so rural, we are the ones who have an outsized, disproportionate impact in how this area is developed. And that ties back into the business thing too. It's not just that there's all this kind of not free, but empty real estate waiting to be employed. Also, we have a unique ability and opportunity to bring in people who are outsizedly high IQ, high agency, very conscientious people. There are a lot of people, you'd be surprised by the caliber of people that show up for our events. Entrepreneurs, people who own businesses who are very successful. So if we can bring people like that to an area that would otherwise just be some random small town, not that it's a bad place to live. I love it here. I lived here before we ever did any of this, and I came to this part of the country after living all over because I love the people. They're just not super well resourced and really industrious in the same way that the Puritan work ethic Northeasterners or something are. But they're great in their own way anyway, because we can bring people from all over the country who are incredibly intelligent, and really just special people. I think we can create new things that people aren't expecting. And that also feeds into this broader political struggle. People need to see an idea realized. You can't just explain that society would be so much better if it looked this way. If you think that's true, then put your theory into practice and then prove it to people. And that's what we intend to do. Right now, it's not super impressive, but we're building all the time. So
It was just the woods 2 years ago.
yeah, exactly. So like right now on my lot, do you want to transition into updates on what we've built recently or what's going on?
Yeah.
Well, we should first mention the Beardson-Beardley law, which essentially states that the closer you live to a Best Buy, the higher the likelihood that the federales are going to come in and install Section 8 housing. And you should use that law to determine where you live in the country, basically. It's your vicinity to the driving distance in minutes to the Best Buy is the metric that you should use.
Why is that the Beardson law?
Because he said that he didn't say that. He said it's better to live near a Best Buy, and that proves that you're civilized.
So it's like the
I'm turning it
inverse-
around and using it.
the
Yeah, it's
inverse
actually the
Beardson.
inverse Beardson law.
It's the proof of a civilized society is living near a Best Buy.
Hmm.
Actually, there's
Which you want
That's
to
what
avoid,
he said.
actually.
Yeah, it's actually the proof of a federally-ridden Section 8 filled society.
Yeah,
So,
very true.
yeah.
Very true. So yeah, what I'm doing lately, so I am working on construction of my actual like family home here. This building, I have my books, I have my computer, it's like my office building. And it's insulated and we finished it out a little bit. So that was fun working on, and some of the younger guys helped out with it. I did pay them. I don't just like recruit slave labor from the internet. Unless someone wants to do slave
We
labor.
did get
and
some
then
weird
they're welcome
emails.
to-
We
Yeah,
got
we
this-
have had offers for people to be slaves.
It's
Usually
strange.
it's black people, which is really weird.
The one that emailed me was he said he was like 3/4 white and 1/4 Native American, and he just, after I told him no, that we don't do slavery, he just kept emailing, and he was like really serious and
Yeah.
sincere about it, and I just had to stop.
I had
responding.
2 different black men email me saying they wanted to be like a voluntary slave, and if they would just like, if we would let them into the community as a slave.
I got a message like that. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
It might
Very strange.
it might be a fetish actually.
I got that vibe. Yeah. I also am not convinced it wasn't the same guy, because the second time I was like, are you the same guy who asked me about this before? And he denied it. But anyway, I shouldn't even entertain these people, frankly. But okay, before we move on, HH 2000, I'm sure this is off topic, but what are your thoughts on Wyatt Stagg, if you're aware of his work?
I wonder what that HH stands for in his username.
There's no telling. Wyatt Stagg?
I don't know
Are
who
you familiar?
Wyatt Stagg is.
I'm ignorant. Not sure.
I'm
Look this
going
up.
to look him up on my smartphone here.
Excellent.
Wyatt.
Instead of asking us super chats, you'll just be talking to ChatGPT or Gemini.
We do have fiber internet out here. You can have cattle and, drone manufacturing.
Yeah.
Says he's a
You do
computer
both.
science graduate. He's on GitHub. He talks
Gotcha.
about anti-white racism. He makes video essays where he talks about movies and thinks that they're spreading anti-white racism.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
That's very true. I'll check him out.
That might be him.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks
It's kind of like a young Kyle Rittenhouse.
yeah. High IQ physiognomy.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways.
So yeah. Lately, like I said, I've been working on my family home, although it's just the foundation at this point. Blocks came in finally, and I have to order sand, but we had this big snowstorm, so I didn't want to dump sand on top of snow or anything. And once it melts, though, we're going to get some warm weather here, and I'll get the sand delivered. I'll start actually stacking those blocks for a crawl space, so that's pretty fun. But then also, I had this metal storage building that I put up more than a year ago, just because I had a lot of stuff in Missouri where I was living. I had to put it somewhere, and I was also planning on actually living in that building as I built a final home. And because it was just this kind of cheap metal building kit and a simple slab that we did ourselves, the guy who delivered the building kit said it was the worst slab he has ever seen. And I believe that because it was very hot. It was a huge slab. We didn't have any like professional equipment. It was just like me and some of the guys. Were you there helping?
I was definitely not there.
Yeah.
I did.
If Peter had
yeah.
been there, it might have turned out differently. Um, but yeah, there's like these huge ripples and it's just not a professional look. Anyway, I don't mind it. I mean, it works for a storage building slash shop, but I actually insulated a portion of it. So I framed out some walls, ran electric, ran hot and cold water, put in a water heater. I even got like a dishwasher in there. I have all the appliances, fully functioning kitchen right now. And it took like 5 days. So it's a lot of aspects of home building are really not that complex if you're looking for functionality. Now, is it the prettiest thing you've ever seen? Definitely not. But it was very cost effective and it's very useful for my family to be able to have. I mean, even when it was 0 degrees out, we had hot baths, we had all this stuff. So that was very exciting to finally have that functionality here. I still have a house 15 minutes away, so I'm not technically here full time, but I'm able to stay here more and more as I gradually develop. And people think they can't just dive into something like this. A lot of families increasingly are buying houses nearby and then transitioning over time into living in the community itself, which I think is really worthwhile. Actually being here, being able to just walk out and see neighbors that you align with, um, being able to walk to community dinner and stuff like that. I definitely, want that lifestyle for myself, but it's a lot easier if you can simply buy a house nearby and then build as time allows. Not everyone can afford that. It's not in the cards for everybody, but for those who are kind of intimidated by the homesteading thing, you can always buy a house nearby and transition. All right. Well, before we move on to other updates about the property, I'm going to go ahead and donate all these super chats or the funds to the legal defense, which is very important. As I mentioned, we are being sued. We have thrown $20,000 at that. Maybe I shouldn't even say the amount. I don't know the law. Anyway, the lawyer can yell at me if he wants, but we have, invested a lot of money in this and we're learning a lot from it. And it's going to be also extra funds in the legal defense fund will be used for further research. It's going to put us in a better position going forward. We can reconstitute and reorganize our association in more resilient ways. And also we can advise other groups in the future from a more informed perspective. So it's not just something that helps me or helps Peter or Scott. I mean, we don't see the money ourselves. It goes to legal research, lawyer fees, things like that. So that's, by the way, the link for that, givesendgo.com/RTTL-legal-fees. And then
it's also on our website.
Yeah, it's on the website. So returntotheland.org/donate. And anything that is chipped in for super chats tonight will go towards that legal defense fund as well. So you can kind of do two birds, one stone with that.
If you have also, if you're like on the board or one of the leaders of a similar organization in our space, and you have questions about legal issues, you can contact us, and if it's something that we know about or something that we've contacted our lawyers about, it's often something that we can help with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we want to be able to advise even other groups, but especially members of RTTL. One of the goals with RTTL is to be a large association with a lot of, collective resources to throw at our mutual defense. Just like, again, they have the ADL. They have these large associations that are meant to protect them and help them in the legal environment.
We also want to be able to eventually expand our family fund to include all RTTL members, because a very long time ago, a certain famous dictator in Europe in the 1930s enacted a lot of really powerful reforms, and one of which were astounding financial benefits to families that had certain numbers of children, right? And I think in recent years, Hungary started doing that again. And a lot of people think, well, wouldn't it be cool if we did that for white people in America? Wouldn't it help the birth rate, and it would help young families be able to start off? And yeah, that's great. So, we have the RTTL Family Fund, and so that covers people who are living in RTTL communities. They receive a benefit of $1,000 when they have a child, which is certainly very helpful. It's a gift for young families. It certainly adds a lot to whatever you're getting at the baby shower. So, and that's really great. But wouldn't it be greater if we did? We don't have to wait for the government to do that, because hey, the government's not going to do that. Not not in a million years, the government that we have now. So why don't we just do it ourselves? Fraternal Benefits Association is allowed to take in funds and pay out benefits to its members as long as it has the correct licenses, and as long as you're following the law, right? Which is something that we really like to do. We're law enthusiasts. We're law following enjoyers. So yeah, it would be amazing to expand that benefit to not just families living in RTTL communities, but to all RTTL members. And so, I mean, that's a donation fund we have on the website. Obviously, immediately right now, the legal fund is more important. But just so you get an idea of the things that we're planning with the resources of our organization, that's something that's on the books, is doing that on a large scale and not waiting for the government to do it for us. Because we currently don't have a charismatic Austrian painter who is willing to do that.
That dictator was Winston Churchill, is that right?
I don't remember his name.
Okay. So
There's a septic question.
Yeah, I saw that. ETK for $5. Thank you very much. Hello, SARS. Member here. See you in April. Is this gentleman Indian or?
Hello, SARS.
See you in April. Okay. So I hope he's not Indian. Question, how do y'all do the septic down there? Is it like gravel or pipes? And are they installed by contractors? I can help with perk surveys if needed. That's very helpful. Thank you for offering. Well, I don't know if I want to get too much into it, but in Arkansas, we can install our own septic systems with a piece of property this large. It has to be up to code and everything, but we don't necessarily have to have them installed by contractors. Past a certain point we do, like if we had more than 20 or 25 or something on the property, or some particular amount.
We get 15 exemptions.
Yeah, supposedly.
According to the health department, yeah. So we have been in contact with the health department about this, and we've also read the laws. So there is an exemption based on the size of the land that you have, but you can't just buy a 100-acre property and put 100 septic systems on it.
Right.
So, and if you do it yourself, you still have to do it to code. You still have to do it well. You have to follow certain guidelines. So the standard septic system is a septic tank, and there's a drain field after that. So there's a few hundred feet of perforated pipes sitting in a gravel trench, in a gravel bed, and that's all covered, so you never see it once it's done. So yeah, that's essentially the septic systems we have here are that. So yeah, some internet activist called the health department a long time ago and tried, said we didn't have septic systems when we were breaking the law. And the guy came out here, and I talked to him for a while, and I showed him the septic systems that we had installed and the one that we were working on, and he was satisfied, and he left. And that's the kind of thing that happens when people, I'm getting them, I'm going to call the government on them, and they're going to go out and with all their guns and shut them down. And they come out here and they talk with us, and and everything's good, and they leave, and that's it. And then they will tend to ignore the other calls they get because they know it's just internet activists. Like the sheriff was like, yeah, I get calls about you guys. I just tell them that, they're not breaking any law, that kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Impeccable impression too, because I went and I met with the guy, exactly what he sounded like.
Yeah.
But I warned him, you're probably going to get calls from people, trying to have us swatted. And he hadn't even thought of that. So it's important when you want to have one of these communities, be good law abiders, be enthusiastic about being good citizens, show up for, like we showed up for the fire department fundraiser and we participated in that. And, there's no reason to isolate yourself from these local communities where these communities can thrive. And we've seen the attitude shift over time, where at first they were skeptical of us, and now that they've seen we're abiding by the law, we are actually putting money into the community as well, supporting local businesses. Now they like us. So,
and a lot of them were initially skeptical, not because they thought we were conservative, they were worried that we were gays from California. And once they realized that we weren't, then they started to open up a little bit, and they're like, "Yeah, we like these guys."
Right. All right, Raven Resolve, $25. Thank you very much. Raven's very enthusiastic and supportive on X, and I appreciate that. It goes a long way.
I see him in all the comments.
Yeah. Have you had any interactions with the invasive species of bird known as the Arkansas long-nosed finch? They can change their plumage to white to blend in with other species, and they subsist on collecting coins and spreading your dirt to local media outlets and your employers.
This sounds
That's
like a
hard to believe.
very advanced bird species.
Yeah. I mean, evolution, I guess. Huh. I mean, I think I've seen something like that. And the way to handle it is honestly like just stick to the truth, stick to doing what you know is right. And these kind of parasitical species that don't have our sense of honor, they can't, like, if you're content in yourself, if you're good in yourself, if you're law abiding, if you're doing what's right, they're not going to be able to spread your dirt. I've learned that lesson the hard way. I'll focus on your own virtue, and these finches will not be able to impact us. That's my take. Okay, so that's it for the super chats, and let's hear some more updates before we wrap up on what's actually going on the land here. So Scott, you've been doing a lot of work. Do you want to?
Yeah, a lot of work on my house, mostly. Some stuff on the land, some land clearing. I did post a while back that we're going to build a pond. I am going to do that. Right now, I'm just focusing on my house because I don't want to do a lot of excavation in this temperature. It tends to break things on the excavator. But my house is kind of tiny. I have a family of 6. You may have seen it. It's that white house that the RTTL ladies posted, I don't know, a few months ago. It's kind of like a shed. I know some people were commenting, "Oh, it's just a shed." Well, it's 1,000 square foot shed, so it's somewhat comfortable. Right now, we're putting in our second bathroom. We're doing an extension on the right side, which will add on another 12 by 22 feet of living space. Also building like an awning on the front. Once I get all that, I'm doing all the interior finishing right now. So drywall, shower insulation, tile work, some electrical.
Are you mounting the cabinets yourself?
Yeah.
They look great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of guys in the community, if you can ask, especially Peter, like just how to do things, construction stuff. And I don't know, you might have to hire him for his contractor fee based on what it is, but simple questions, he'll just answer them for you.
If you want it done right, go to Peter. If you want it done that day, kind of half-assed, then come to me.
And there's something to be said for doing a half-ass. If you need it done quick, then get it done. But but if you want it to last a long time and look really nice, then you got to spend a little more time and money.
Right. Yeah.
It's probably not worth hiring the guys here for finishing work, but it's definitely nice to have like all the framing experience and stuff. I don't want to do all the framing or especially plumbing. I got to Peter for plumbing stuff.
It's a real pain in the butt.
Because finishing's expensive. You might as well do it
I feel
yourself.
like plumbing is the easiest part if you're dealing with PEX, or maybe electric. Although I did electrocute myself twice running the electric. So
why did you have it on while you were running it?
Well, it was a long way. I didn't have a breaker there on the box because it was a main lug, and it's like 100 feet, 150 feet away.
The main breaker turns off the main lug on the bottom, like that 200 amp breaker. It shuts that off.
Yeah, it doesn't have one.
Oh,
the box. Yeah, no, it's just the individual breakers, and then the wires go straight.
So there's
into
not any main
the panel.
That's strange. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, that's why I electrocuted myself, but I'm fine, I think. All right, Stanley.
It was like getting a real supercharge.
Yeah, that's the strategy. Stanley, $20. Thank you very much. I wish you the best, even though you rejected me for membership. Well, no hard feelings. I mean, there are many reasons why we have to reject people. We have to be consistent in our standards. Very often I wish in a particular case, I can tell someone is like a good person, but some factor in either their family background or their criminal record or whatever It's not something they can control now. It's not their choice, but it's just there. And that's the way it is. We're going to build out more of a friends of RTTL kind of program in the future, where more people who can't necessarily be in our association can be involved, can get involved in various ways. But yeah, thank you very much for the support anyway.
So sometimes we want to accept them, but then in their interviews, they say that dreaded line that Israel has a right to defend herself or something like that. And we just have to hit the reject button, you know?
That's actually not our policy directly, but yeah, it wouldn't help your case. Put it that way. HH2000, $5 again. Thank you very much. Do you put stock into the idea of the revelation of the method? I don't know what that is.
I would say yes. Oh, it's that thing where like the evil global elites have to tell you what they're doing. It's like their weird distorted moral code.
I believe in that, because then you're submitting, you're like voluntarily consenting to your own enslavement kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's a weird game. But I think that at least some of them play by those rules.
I think it just makes sense. Like, if you wanted more total control over a population, you would get them to accept it themselves and say it themselves. And like with the Epstein release, of course, that's the big news item that everybody's been talking about, and we didn't really mention it so far because it's not directly, related to intentional communities and all of that. But I mean, that's something where there's so much overwhelming evidence of comprehensive systemic evil on a huge scale. And the more we don't do anything about, the more we know and then remain inactive, the more we're kind of complicit in it. In a way, it's like, well, we told you, we released all the files. This is everything that this cabal of like,
it's revelation of the method.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and the people that participate in the system wholly are complaining that we like run away from the system. Well, I mean, yeah, we don't want to be part of that,
Right. We don't want to be complicit in our own enslavement. So, in my mind, I'm very enthusiastic about the laws. I love paying taxes, pay extra taxes sometimes just out of appreciation. But really, it's about building a parallel society, a new society where I don't believe this whole order is going to last forever. No prior empire has lasted forever, and something is going to take its place at some point. That's kind of my long run. It's actually Evola's take as well, and Men Among the Ruins. We're in the Kali Yuga, right? We're in this declining age inexorably. You might have many golden ages, but overall, we're kind of fated to a kind of decline in the world that we're living in. So you can't resuscitate a dying civilization. It's like any life form. There's a natural life cycle. And if we're going to hit the end of it, you don't focus on spending all the money on end of life care for a dying civilization. You spend your resources on what comes next.
Yeah, when the Roman Empire was collapsing slowly over hundreds of years, you didn't have like Groypers secretly getting into top government positions and turning it around and having like a second arc. When the German government was losing the war in the 1940s, you didn't have like white hats getting into government positions and making decisions and turning it around and a fourth Reich or whatever. That didn't happen. There's like a natural arc for those things, and so you don't want to fight against the arc, or maybe you do, but you want to like walk up the down escalator.
Generally futile. So
resistance is futile.
Yep, that's the message. That's the message we want to leave at the end of this stream. That's basically it.
Message of hopelessness and despair.
Yeah. You know what? No, that's not true. We didn't cover your updates because you're also building.
That's true. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've been working on two main things. Really, is I'm starting to build a pole barn. So now I have like the structure of the walls up. I just have to like, buy some more wood and get the trusses on. And then I'm building a room onto the side of the house. And so it's like, well, I got the front wall roughed in, and now I'm working on the foundation of the back wall. But the last few weeks was like the Arkansas winter that we get. That's a few weeks long. So it was just too cold to, like, theoretically, you can work with concrete when it's that cold if you know what you're doing, but you don't, unless you can help it, you don't want to. So I put that on hold for a little while. And once we start to get more non-freezing nights in like a few weeks, I'll finish that up and start working on the next room after that. So those things were coming along, and now they're on hold, but that's how things go.
Yeah, but it's looking good. Your addition's going to be more tornado resistant than probably any structure around here so far.
Yeah, I'm starting to enjoy the CMUs, the cinder blocks. Um, and I'm going to try to use that for a lot more of the house now because wood construction is nice and easy, conventional framing. It's cheap and great, but I want something that will really survive the apocalypse. So, oh, speaking of the apocalypse, do we want to talk about the biggest settlement RTTL settlement community one news story over the last 2 months, which was the massive drone swarm that's been flying
Oh, yeah.
over our
Oh,
property for 2
yeah.
months?
Yeah, let them know about it.
It's
I'm
crazy.
the only one who's not actually seen them in the sky, but
Even,
everyone
even
else has
last
seen
night they
them.
were up. It's just a lot fewer than there used to be.
For the last however many months, just nonstop. And this is not just like one drone; it's like 100 drones, and it's so loud in my house between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Just this constant propeller noises, like all night long. You can't really see them unless they fly low. You can use night vision.
There's
and
a
see
few
them,
that
but
you can see. Like there's usually 5 or 6 that you'd see with the naked eye, just
so
beelining across the sky.
Large, like fixed wing
Fixed wing
drones.
drones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did call the FAA, and they opened an investigation, and some lady was looking into it, and I gave her more details. I gave her video, and then she's like, I think I know what this is about. I'm gonna have to pass it up to my supervisor. She passes it up to her supervisor, and he immediately just shuts the investigation down. So I
For
don't know.
lack of evidence. And
Yeah.
we have videos and pictures of the drones. I was looking it up online, and apparently this is a phenomenon that's been happening around the country for around 2 years. You remember it was on the news when it was happening in New Jersey
Mhm.
almost a couple of years ago, and there was no explanation from the government until finally they gave some really like half-baked, just some research that we're doing or something like that. I think it might be a psyop. I wonder if they're doing like really extensive surveying. Maybe they're trying to find the people that start looking at the drones through scopes and stuff like that, and like marking down those people as the ones who would start to fight back if the government were to like engage in massive drone warfare against civilians or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things it could be, but all around the country there have been reported drone swarms, and so here it's been going on for at least a couple months now. And there's usually 5, 6, 7 drones you could see with the eye, and when you put on the night vision, you could see a lot more smaller drones. It's crazy, and
Right.
it's not just over our property; it's the whole area. Some nights there's none, but then they'll come back.
Right. So DHS, remember, I've not even seen the drones. Peter saw them. Scott reported them. So it's not.
Everyone
I'm not
else
the guy.
here has seen them except Eric, so I think he just doesn't look up at the sky at night.
Exactly. So don't worry about me, DHS. When I was more conspiratorial, I would read like the training documents for what was supposed to go on in the FEMA camps, because there were whole like MOSs in the army that were dedicated to effectively crowd control in FEMA camps. And it included like protocols on how to identify potential problematic people or people who would lead like insurrections in the FEMA camps. So the idea that they would be targeting people who were paying special attention to drones like that is totally not outside the realm of possibility.
But I started to dismiss that idea because I realized they wouldn't need to be around here for so long if that was what was happening. So
it's probably more than that. Yeah.
There's a swarm drone company in Northwest Arkansas, so it could be one of their testing fleets, but then why would they be in the same area? It could be them. It could also just be, because it's been happening all around the country for a really long time, it's probably some big government operation that are doing some really intense surveying. The problem is
Yeah.
they don't tell anybody, and they could just tell people. So the fact they don't tell people means it either is a massive psyop or they're using it as an additional psyop on top of whatever it is they're doing, which might be some legitimate mission. They're like, okay, well, let's do an experiment. We'll not tell anybody why all these drones are up here, and we'll see what happens. We'll measure the results. So it's probably like a massive sociological, psychological experiment.
Right.
And the drones actually are just doing some mundane thing like scanning the environment, scanning the earth for lithium deposits or something like that.
Sure.
There is a lot of lithium interest in Arkansas, so who knows?
That could be it. They're up there with LiDAR or something.
So they do look like, if you look up the aircraft, E2 Hawkeye is one I was familiar with in the Navy. It looks kind of like that. It's got a big disc on the top. and there's just 100 of them in
It's
the sky.
definitely big money, and it's almost got to be either government or defense contractor because that many drones, fixed wing drones up in the sky for that long, and it's been happening all around the country. So it's, it's government.
Right.
It's government or defense contractor.
Maybe when we start our drone manufacturing company, we can fly up there and, see what's going on or something. Is that illegal? Can you spy on a drone with a drone?
I think you can.
Sure. We also learned that you're not allowed to shoot down drones even over your own property.
Very bad. They will come and put you in jail.
However, if you train a falcon to take one down, there's nothing illegal about that. So,
really? Are you sure that's
it's
not
probably
illegal?
illegal. I don't know.
It's probably
I don't think
illegal.
there's any specific law against it. So Yashael Ben Dan, hey Eric and friends, love your stuff. NRTTL, very impressed. 2 questions. 1, has ethnogenesis taken place with the Black American population? 2, is RTTL a way to avoid the New World Order propaganda in society? I would say yes and yes. I would say undoubtedly Black Americans are an ethnic type now, just like white Americans are an ethnic type distinct from their European forebears.
I mean, they consider mestizos in Central Mexico, South America to be an ethnic type, to essentially be a race, and they've only been in existence in that form for 400, 500 years. So if that's how long people consider, if you've been around, if your people have been around for 400 years and they call you your own race, then yeah, I would say definitely.
Yeah. They're also drawn from similar African populations on average, but not just like, it's not like they're all Angolans. They're from various ethnic tribes in Africa, plus European admixture. And that's kind of what ethnogenesis is about. You take certain component ethnicities, blend them together, and relatively homogenize them until you have this new type. And then there's going to be kind of the core example that's most like that type, and then a periphery that's less like it. So, I'm not like the most heritage American because I have Norwegian ancestry that came here only 150 years ago. Whereas some people, and these people apply to RTTL sometimes, it's like every single line of their family goes back to the Mayflower. And
they always like to brag about that.
Yeah, they love to. And a lot of them are in the South as well. But yeah, with Black Americans, I think the same thing. And then is RTTL a way to avoid the New World Order propaganda in society? It's the only way. I was saying that earlier. It's like, if you're just teaching your kids and that's it, and then they go to public school and then they get online and there's no guardrails up for them with the rest of society, they're totally susceptible to either going off and being transed or getting into hard left ideology.
It's going to be very hard to find other kids for your kids to hang out with on a regular basis if you are in or near a community like ours, because not a lot of families are going to be on board, and kids pick up things. A lot of young kids now are just glued to their 5-year-olds are just glued to their smartphone and tablets all day. They're getting subliminally messaged all day long by stuff they're watching on YouTube, and they go to kindergarten and first grade, they start learning things they really shouldn't be learning at that age. And so it's very hard to not have your kids propagandized if you're not in a community or near a community.
True. All right, HH2000 again, $5. Thank you very much. Okay, last question. Any tips on convincing people on the fence to join RTTL? Well, a lot of the talking points we've been discussing here. Do you care about your kids? Are you concerned about the future of your community? Do you have any guarantee that your community is going to remain traditional or white or conservative or any of the things that you value? Realistically, you don't, unless you take precautions, you take measures into your own hands to set a space aside that is well defined. Like in a lot of ways, we're doing what classical liberalism would have us do. It's like, we're not exactly libertarians in some sense, but in another way, this is what libertarians would have us do: form explicit social contracts where we actually have societies that consciously reflect our values. And if you don't do that, you don't control the society. You don't control who comes into your community, who goes out. You control nothing. And the people who are the social engineers over us all, they control everything. So I think that's the main thing. Do you want control over your community or not?
Yeah, the libertarians love my social contract. Actually, they hate my social contract. Or no, that's the anarcho-capitalists. They hate my social contract. But I think the social contract is great as long as it's a contract that we can get behind and agree with, and it's with our own people.
Yeah.
We don't want to be forced to contract with a bunch of other people who hate us. That doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
for the anarcho-capitalists, have something right with the hate against them, a social contract. But I think the correct response is to just restore the social contract rather than like, oh, we need an anarcho-capitalist society where everything's governed by contract and there doesn't need to be any trust because everything is managed by
Right.
decentral autonomous organizations. That was the kind of slop that Stefan Molyneux was putting into the heads of young people when I was getting red pilled many years ago.
I like the work of Hans Hermann Hoppe, of all the libertarian or anarcho-capitalist types. Like, if you take it to its logical conclusion, that framework it's the base, that's the substrate, and then above that, if you want to develop society, you have all these shared externalities and collective social capital that's built up over generations, and therefore you need like borders, you need more of traditional society. So it might seem counterintuitive, but like fully realized anarcho-capitalism sort of like goes full circle back to a trad feudal type society in certain circumstances. Not that we're doing feudalism, but there are certain benefits as well of that kind of continuity and stewardship of land and apprenticeship and craft guilds and stuff like that. I think it'd be good if in some ways we went back to that. However, not through a regress, through a progress of our current framework to a logical conclusion that's defensible. At least that's my tack. I don't think going back is ever an option. We can only take what we have, take the hand we're dealt, and do the best we possibly can with it. So, any last words for the audience?
Yeah, the ANCAPs and the libertarians really don't like borders. So when I was a young libertarian, I was sitting there raging about borders because that's what all the memes were doing. And then I went to another country and I learned why we have borders and why those borders should be very tall and very thick and impenetrable and should cover every linear inch of your border.
You got one more there.
Oh yeah, one last super
And that's
chat.
why we're building a stone wall on the front of the property here.
Literally.
And if you donate to our beautification fund, then we can build it longer. And it's already pretty long and it's pretty nice. And I'm sure the people driving by appreciate it. So.
And if you donate enough, then we'll start building the turrets along the wall too.
Yes.
Sally McCracker, is there an Iowa chapter of RTTL, or are you aware of any groups in collective land ownership? Yeah, we have folks in Iowa.
That's
Iowa,
the Midwest, or Midwest
yeah.
chapter.
So we have these large kind of regional chats where once you get into RTTL, you're sorted or you self-sort into the region that's appropriate to you.
And then you can meet up with people in the region. You can have events, and that will end up turning into, people collectively getting together and sharing resources. However, we're not going to be publicly advertising that. So if there are other communities and other places in the country, we're not going to be advertising on a YouTube stream. Well, you only find out about it if you're in that regional chapter that's doing it.
Right. I can say we have members in just about every state, but as far as the current status of communities out there and what all is going on, that's something you have to join the association.
That's classified on a need-to-know basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
RTTL is a lot bigger than people know. I don't know if they know how many people are in RTTL, but it's a lot.
The media has focused on the community in Arkansas so much that some people actually say, oh, I want to join RTTL, but I don't think I could move to Arkansas anytime soon. And because they see this community on the news and they think this is RTTL, well, RTTL is a nationwide organization. We have many members.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's a nationwide organization, because, we have people in Australia, South Africa, Europe, Canada. So we have people all over the world that are members of RTTL. Obviously, our biggest presence is in the U.S. There's not that many people in the Europe chapter,
but stuff's still happening even in Europe. So if you're in Europe, consider linking up and finding out. And we also have a larger network. Like this Saturday, starting at noon Central Time, I'll be hosting the International Intentional Community Online Conference. And that'll include projects outside of RTTL in Europe, in South Africa, in Australia, in these different countries. So, even if you can't find something within RTTL, still networking with us, you're very likely to find out about other projects that you wouldn't otherwise find out about.
Because a lot of those other projects don't have big presences, but we know about them. So you join RTTL and you're going to find, oh, there's this group in this country in Europe, and there's this group in this state, and you find out more. So the conference, I'm going to send an email out to a bunch of RTTL members, so we should get a lot more people on there as well. So
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. It'll be mostly listening to the speakers share their stories with their own communities, but there will be a participatory element. You can ask questions of, folks like Ustridum of Orania or Thomas Sewell in Australia and people like that. One last super chat, Stanley, $10. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Friends of RTTL in the future. Yeah, it's something we're going to have to build out, and we're considering a wide scale reorganization in a lot of ways. And so the precise nature of that Friends of RTTL will kind of be downstream from how that all pans out. So, oh, and then Sally, one last time, $5. Thanks, guys. I'm not seeing a lot of downside to joining. I think I'm eligible. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt. If you're a person of European heritage, you believe in traditional values, and you read through our documents, it all looks good to you. We try to be big tent, but not too big, where, it's with a purpose, it's something in common, but also we are accepting of European Christians, European pagans, not foreign religions, not foreign worldviews. But if it's traditional, if it's European, there's enough continuity there that, we're within our rights to really express that and make the most out of that. So thanks everyone for tuning in for episode 1 of the official Return to the Land podcast. We'll get back with you hopefully next week, same time. By the way, the tickets for that online conference, it is intentionalcommunity.online, and you can get a ticket and you'll get the link to view the stream and also participate in the conversation through a voice call. So once again,